Hello and welcome to Unfamiliarity to Mastery, Navigating the S-Curve for Competency Development in Organizations. With us today from Adobe is Jamal Watkins. Jamal is a Captivate Prime learning evangelist and has had an extensive career as a learning and development practitioner and leader for approximately 25 years. During this time, he has become adept at influencing business processes by driving business results through the use of blended learning and human capital management. His professional journey continues to lead to opportunities to partner with key stakeholders that influence employee and customers towards achieving business goals. His professional passion continues to blend learning, talent principles with enabling technologies. So let's please welcome Jamal to the session. Jamal, I will bring up your first slide and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. I always appreciate the warm welcome, Mel. Thank you very much. And I realize I have to send you an edited bio because the name Captivate Prime has actually been adjusted to Adobe Learning Manager. So for the sake of today's session, when I make a reference to Adobe's Learning Solution, it has actually been renamed from Captivate Prime to Adobe Learning Manager. So that's just a quick footnote there. But again, I appreciate that, Mel. And so this is a tongue twister, this title, Unfamiliarity to Mastery, Navigating the S-Curve for Competency Development. This is a pretty hot topic. I am Jamal Watkins, Adobe's lead learning evangelist, and happy to be here today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So here's a pretty interesting quote from Charles B. Handy, the author of The Second Curve, Thoughts on Reinventing Society. Anything that takes us out of our comfort zones for a while can act as a reminder that the past that we're used to may not be best for our future. So what do we do as organizations to really help to prepare our employees, right? Our most important assets within the organization for the future. So the concept of the Sigmoid Curve or the S curve came from Charles B. Handy. But before we go into the curve, I again just want to continue to highlight that the most important asset within an organization are its people, right? So this is really an effort to really start to focus on our people and understand how it is that we can grow them and the process that's associated with that. So let's go ahead and move forward and look at what is the S curve, right? So the S curve was originally used for organizational growth. In the context of organizations, it's a move from unfamiliarity to mastery, right? So sometime in the mid 1990s, it was being used to denote hypergrowth within organizations. And the S curve, it's used in multiple contexts, such as the diffusion of innovation to understanding how innovation is adopted, which starts slow at first, but then it reaches a plateau. And then disruptions happen that allow it to take off like a rocket. It's almost like similar to if you're working out in the gym and you want to introduce muscle confusion and disruptions of if your body plateaus to certain workouts that you want to purposely cause confusion in order to start regaining gains and regaining results within your regimen. So sometime in 2012, in the Harvard Business Review, Juan Mendez and Whitney Johnson, they extrapolated the S curve in the context of organizational learning, right? Where they decoded that just like hypergrowth organizations, individual competency development should also follow the S curve, which means that starting with unfamiliar growth and turning it into muscle memory, and then going for disruptive growth through competency development, right? What matters most for organizations is to help individuals navigate the plateau. It's tough to do, easier said than done. Navigate the plateau that they reach so that they continue to develop their work skills into their muscle memory. So the S curve is not always hierarchical. It can be lateral too, right? And it doesn't always have to move into the next promotion for an individual, but can be pushed into a new direction, which can take the learner further into their personal or their professional journey. Right. So we could use the S curve to help us think about how individuals change, how individuals learn, um, and overall how we grow. Right. So again, the model here, if we were to look at the diagram here, I'm just going to call out this last point of that the learner then needs to break through the sweet spot to move to the next level, right? So that is that plateau, right? So you almost have to have a very concerted, disruptive approach in order for them to break through to the next phase. And that next phase can either be hierarchical or it can be lateral as well. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leverage the chat as Mel posted. You can post any questions or comments in there. We can continue to expand the discussion. Um, Now let's talk about how growth happens. And this was an article that I found within McKinsey, and it happens in three phases. We have the launch point, we have the sweet spot, and we have the mastery. So every time you start something new, you're at the base of the S, right? This is what we call the launch point. This is the place where it's going to feel really slow. It may feel discouraging. It may feel overwhelming. It's new, right? It it may also feel impatient, right? You may feel impatient. The learner may feel impatient. The employee may feel impatient, or the individual, however we want to describe them. That's because even though the growth is happening, it's not yet apparent, right? You've got this predictive model in your brain. It makes lots and lots of predictions, and those predictions can be incorrect, right? Your dopamine drops. You're having all sorts of experiences that make this phase feel like it's slower than it really is. The second phase of the S curve of learning, that's the sweet spot. This is a place where you hit the knee of the curve. Um, it's that steep, and it actually goes fast, right? So this is the exciting portion of the curve. This predictive model that you're running is becoming increasingly accurate, right? You're making predictions and you're getting lots of dopamine, lots of upside surprises. You're feeling competent. You're feeling really confident. You're feeling like you really have this. This is the place where it's still hard, but it's no longer too hard. Um, I have conversations with my son, who's a sophomore in high school, and throughout school, you spend the first month kind of reviewing what you learned the previous semester. And then you get into new content. And when you get into the new content, you start to hit fatigue. You know, you start to reach that launch point. It's not as easy as it was maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks of school where you were revisiting things from last semester, but you're learning new concepts. And it starts to feel hard until you get into the middle of the semester where it's still hard, but it no longer feels hard, right? It's easier. Um, but it's no longer too easy, but you feel exhilarated, right? You feel like you're right when you're supposed to be. That's why it's called the sweet spot. This is the place where growth not only is fast, but it feels fast. So you have slow within the launch point, and then you have fast within the sweet spot. So you have slow, you have fast, and you hit the third part of the curve, which is mastery. This is the place where the model's now starting to work, right? You figured everything out, but because you're no longer enjoying the feel good effects of learning, you tend to get bored. This is the place where growth is actually slow. You've got slow, then you got fast, and then you have slow again. But this is how you grow. Once you understand what growth looks like, and once you have this simple visual model to think about, you can increase your capacity to grow. So patience is definitely a virtual, and really appreciating the progress that is being made throughout. but patience is a key ingredient in at least acknowledging where you are within the process, which stage you may be in. So this graphic is definitely something that I think is helpful, that can definitely be reused in the learning journey for an individual, but also as an organization, the competency development model itself, and really helping learners to explain and understand why it is that they're feeling the way they're feeling, and why it is that we're doing what it is that we're doing. Now let's go to the role of L&D with the S-curve. I'm going to focus on the middle phase within the S-curve, what we define as hypergrowth, right? What we define as what is occurring fast. So this middle phase can be followed during the phase in which we plateau, right? Becoming too comfortable with our processes. When we do our jobs the same way over and over, or when you're going to the gym and you're doing the same workout over and over, the tasks, the workouts become automatic. We often forget that the importance of learning new things and keeping up with new developments. Eventually, our skills become out of sync with the organization or what the market needs. That's when it becomes really, really crucial to leap to the beginning of the new S curve, right? If the S curve illustrates how a particular competence might develop over time, then it stands to reason that one's portfolio of competencies is simply the cumulative or the serial sum of specific S curves of development, right? Learners are encouraged to disrupt themselves. Just like within a workout, within a regiment, you're encouraged to do new exercises, right? You're encouraged to purposely disrupt yourself, or disrupt themselves, to jump from one learning curve onto another and string together a series of S curves to navigate a long journey of development and professional impact. I'm actually going to go back to the previous slide, and this is basically the different curves that I'm referencing with respect to jumping to different curves, right? Even if it's lateral, right? So you may work concurrently on different competencies, and one competency may aid the development and the growth of another competency that you're working on. So it's not always hierarchical, as I referenced earlier. So I did want to at least call up the visual that I'm referencing in this respective slide here within the hypergrowth mode. Now, if we were to jump back into this, each time we make a jump, it can be one of the most challenging and risky professional maneuvers that we make. The next S curve might involve changing your role or your function within an organization, or changing companies or changing jobs altogether. And we can never be assured of a successful outcome. But if we understand the process, at least we can feel confident in the decisions that we're making and continue to stay motivated and continue to develop competencies, as well as inheriting new skills and feeling confident in the evolution of the S curve itself from an individual perspective. Now let's move forward and talk about how to navigate the S curve. So when we look at disruptive organizations, the sum of organizational competency can often be correlated to the cumulative sum of the serial specific S curves that the employees have achieved over a period of time. One of the key trends that organizations now follow is to drive lateral practices, such as internal hackathons. You may have also heard of entrepreneurships, or simple garage innovation weeks, right? To help reward and recognize the competency development that its employees have undertaken in both the hierarchical as well as the lateral areas. So the role of L&D in the context of developing serial S curves for the organization, it becomes really critical as they're the ones, L&D are the ones to ensure that the talent continues to be motivated, right? The talent continues to be activated and continues to build competencies that are in adjacent areas, right? So you're building competencies concurrently. But this is easier said than done. And the challenge lies in helping L&D organizations figure out not just the why, but also the how, right? So while analysts help organizations align their organizational needs with the market demands, it's also the onus of the L&D teams to align talent accordingly. And we all know that that can't be done in a single day. But the awareness of the L&D teams to start with why, and then begin to focus on the how, and then to begin to introduce learning assets, learning resources, activities, and exercises that allow the learner, the employees, to develop skills laterally, even if it's concurrently. Now, I appreciate this, Laura. Definitely makes it easier to align the learning journey in developing e-learning as well, right? Branching, multiple branching, parallel branching, a lot of different ways to really introduce that lateral path. Now let's look at how did COVID accelerate the S curve, right, and the competency adoption. So 69% of organizations during COVID, post COVID, prioritize skill building. 46% of organizations prioritize redeployment of human resources, realign their human resources organization. And 71% of organizations found that skill transformations have a positive impact. It is not something that we should be scared of. It is not something that organizations should be scared of. It's not something that employees should be scared of. So often there are times of stress which accelerate the pace of adoption that with the S curve within the learning context. The the classic case here is COVID, which accelerated organizational transformation at a very rapid rate. And this is where the McKinsey study now comes in. But this validated that competency development models that organizations put forward earlier is something that's definitely worthwhile. And I think tangibly, everyone now tacitly understands the need for continued competency development. Uh, we were also talking about how navigating the S curve and where technology comes into play. It definitely makes it easier, right? So Laura referenced developing e-learning. Um, when we look at the role of authoring tools, e-learning authoring tools, when we look at the role of learning management systems and learning experience platforms and talent and performance platforms, they all have a role in helping with mid to large organizations that find it difficult to drive individual development through manual processes. Um, and we now understand the need to integrate the technology ecosystem to help with that. So there's certain limitations that you're going to reach with adopting the S curve. If your primary approach is a manual approach, right? The technology does serve a huge role, a significant role. It's probably a better term here on really helping to facilitate that process. So I am with Adobe, and we do have a learning solution. It's called Adobe Learning Manager. This is the solution that's been renamed from Captivate Prime, and it does assist, right? This is an example of technology that does assists in driving the S curve competency development. It's one platform, right? It's a single platform, SaaS based, that helps to train organizational ecosystems that contribute to growth. We have easy integrations that help to align skills and competency requirements with organizational growth. And then we have engagement mechanisms, right? Um, Gamification, badging, leaderboards, transcripts, reports, dashboards. So we have enabling technologies within the platform that assists with the S curve, with the competency development of an individual. So when we designed the Learning Manager, the purpose was to deploy learning programs easily. Over the years, the platform has continued to evolve, and it'll continue to evolve, right, into an organizational ecosystem that can help L&D teams to visualize organizational needs, to align skills, right, to create competency development models that can help employees carve out their individual learning journeys in such a way that it gears them for helping to navigate the S curve, right? The journey from unfamiliarity to mastery to disruptive growth can all be accessed in one platform. If I were to sum it up and say, how does it happen? I would focus on three primary areas of the learning management solution, right? And these three areas are the ones that are mentioned here on the slide. So it's one platform, easy integrations that, and when I say integrations, we're speaking of integrations with course libraries. We're speaking of integrations with custom course libraries, as well as integrations with HRIS systems that have key employee attributes, data attributes that can really now help to serve into establishing that those skills matrix, that skills landscape that you can now start to attach skills to learning assets. And the technology does help you to kind of matriculate the S curve path and the learning journey itself. Now let's move forward and talk through the personalization that Adobe Learning Manager has to offer. So it becomes extremely important to capture data and attributes for each learner. In some cases, this information may already exist in your HRIS system or your HRMS system. In other cases, this information may not currently exist, but it may not exist because no one has asked for it. Therefore, because it hasn't been asked for, it's not currently being captured. But that doesn't mean that you can't make requests to capture this information upfront within your HRMS systems. You can then send this information downstream to your learning management system. In this case, it's Adobe Learning Manager or any other learning management system or learning experience platform. And you can start to apply these data attributes to enrich the learner experience. And it really, really pays dividends tenfold, right? It does make the learning journey begins to make sense because it is personalized to the skills to the skills of the individual, the learning path of the individual, but also to the business needs of the organization. Now, triggering curiosity and exploration. This is also where the technology really helps to aid this journey. So the science within the technology is artificial intelligence based recommendations, similar to what Netflix or Amazon will do with Netflix with your viewing habits, Amazon with your purchasing or buying habits. It'll begin to look at your behavior within the tools, look at your habits, and the more you're using the tool, it has the ability, the AI now has the ability to match your behaviors up with other learners, buyers, consumers that are using the same platform and start to make intelligent recommendations so that now you have an immersive browsing and search experience, right? You also have an inkling into different peer activities. So the more you're using the platform, right? Every learner, every user, the more they're using the platform, that's more intel, that's more data that the AI is continuing to gather, which allows the platform to be more prescriptive to that particular individual. And that's where the personalization really comes into play. That's where the technology really helps to aid into the competency development that's aligned with the S curve, right? In addition to that, it's it's it also supports that lateral movement. It's not linear in the sense that there are multiple competencies that you can work on at the same time, but more importantly, that these competencies complement one another. They don't contend with one another, but they do complement one another to really aid and keep you in that sweet spot for a longer period of time. Now let's look at the engagement and the community building. Um, it becomes really, really important from an L&D perspective. Peer learning, train the trainer have traditionally always been key elements in in the learning journey itself. So as a result, Adobe Learning Manager does have a social learning component that does foster and really encourage user-generated content and skill-based interest and discussion boards. So beyond the formal learning event, you can extend those learning interactions by now introducing and um, championing the social learning components so that now your peers, your employees, and your subject matter experts can now take the conversation to an applied learning perspective, right? From a motivation perspective, there are gamification features through points, through badges, through leaderboards that really helps to kind of tap into the intrinsic competitive human nature that we all have. Where do I currently stand, right? Um, what are my rewards and recognitions, right? And if you can even extend that into loyalty programs and reward programs, we could use those points and badges to actually get company swag. That's also another kind of cheat code to really kind of tap into the motivational juices of the learners, right? Um, Peer activities with peer recommendations also is a way to extend the learning experience, where you've evolved from a instructor centric or corporate centric learning experience to now getting into a student centric learning experience or peer centric learning experience where they're owning the content, they're owning control content, right? L&D has already kind of made the content available. And then now your peers in the organization, they're working off of the controlled content to really extend the learning experience in the proper context that's needed for that particular function, for that particular role. You can also track learner development and engage with the learners from a in high engagement perspective. It's really important with with highly motivated learners that you identify skill champions, that you engage learners and you trigger involvement and you trigger next level involvement as well. So whether that be subject matter experts within their particular role or leaders within the organization, that's a way that you can actually engage highly motivated learners. But we all understand that there may be people that are still kind of stuck at the beginning of the S curve, and we'll need to kind of foster and facilitate um, that slow learning that they're in, that they may be a bit hesitant to really engage in. So there are a number of activities, there are a number of features within the Adobe Learning Manager that does support that. So there are learning interactions. There's you can trigger reinforcement communications to remind them of courses, to remind them of resources that are currently available to them within the learning platform. You can work with managers to continue to increase involvement. And that's another layer from an applied function perspective. Gamification and components, continuing to remind them to increase involvement and triggering awareness campaigns, right? So push marketing materials that emails, um, sticky announcements, brand campaigns that continue to enforce the reinforce learning campaigns that really will help to aid their progress with the S curve. Now, there are enterprise integrations that I did speak to earlier, but these are the out of the box integrations that are available with Adobe Learning Manager. If we were to start here, there's a Salesforce integration. I'm calling that out initially because if you have a sales team, that's a very unique target population in that they're spending a lot of time with FaceTime with customers, but their primary system may also be Salesforce. We have an integration with Salesforce where Adobe Learning Manager can exist natively within the Salesforce environment. So it doesn't require the learner to the sales learner to leave the Salesforce environment to access Adobe Learning Manager. We can exist within that environment. So that really helps with momentum. That really helps with user adoption, and you're not losing any traction. We could also send and receive data to and from Salesforce as well, right? So if you're not integrating the platform within Salesforce, we can send data directly to the ALM solution. We have a commerce connector where you can recognize revenue in the event that you want to charge for your training. There's next generation data visualization tools, integrations with Power BI if you want to create visualization dashboards with third-party visualization tools. There's an integration with LinkedIn Learning. There's FTP connectors, multiple enterprise app connectors. And then we have the Adobe Experience Manager, which if you are an AEM user, you can actually bring learning components natively within your corporate brand, within your corporate website, without them having to go into the learning environment. We can bring the learning environment to them. And then finally, Marketo Engage connector, which is managing program campaigns and really bringing learning closer to your marketing efforts. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to us here at Adobe. And if I can recall that email, I will definitely reference it at the end here. There are 5 layers that we focus on with Adobe Learning Manager, that being the experience itself, which gives you the ability to integrate the learning solution within your corporate sites or to use it as a standalone solution. We have the engagement layer, which does support hybrid learning, gamification, social learning that I referenced earlier. Personalization is really important. And this is where our AI-based engine, right? Our award-winning Adobe Sensei AI-based machine learning engine that manages 1.5 billion parameters on a daily basis is pretty impressive and continues to make the AI engine that much more agile and intelligent. Automation, right? We can support learning plans, reporting, and visualization. You can establish different business rules with respect to establishing smart workflows for user management and for course enrollments. And then finally, the course platform is we do satisfy many performance and security mandates, extended integrations, and then recognizing revenue with training monetization in the event that you have a profit center that you're creating with your learning content itself. So we're getting close to the end of the presentation here, but I did want to call out that here's one case study of how Domino's navigated the S-curve with their franchisee employees. They had 200,000 franchisee employees trained. There was an active content marketplace with over 80,000 courses that were managed centrally and deployed through their franchisee heads, right? It was also the franchisee heads were able to create their own instance of the courses that their particular employees needed. But then you also were able to centralize what every Domino employee needed as well from a learning perspective. There was a 40% reduction in administrative efforts right? Everyone had visibility from an administrative L&D perspective into what other franchisees were doing. And as a result, there was a 40% reduction in admin efforts, which definitely helped the bottom line. And then the ROI of training compared with the actual store performance to understand not just the hierarchical approach, but also the lateral skill building was something that was extremely important. And the technology really helped and assist with those efforts. Now, Publicis was also another use case that decided to include here, where it transitioned its employees into digital marketing tools. So they transformed employees across 100 offices worldwide. And they used AI to drive the personalized learner first experience that drove more than 12,500 employees to upskill really, really fast. They created their IQ Academy with a competency based learning model, right? So you associate the competency model with job bands, with job positions, and then you associate the courses with those particular jobs or those particular competencies. And then the AI also kind of kicks in with basically what are the business rules that have been established by the learning teams, and then how do we automate that process going forward and use the data attributes that are being sent over from the HRIS system to really make this a very seamless experience, but a very enriching and intelligent experience that really kind of personalizes it for the employee and really helps them navigate that S curve and really helps to facilitate their competency development. That brings us to the end of the presentation. Would like to thank everyone here for attending. The email, if you want to find out more about Adobe Learning Manager, is e-learning e-learning at at adobesells.com is the email itself. And I will also follow up with Melissa when she sends out the handout to here we are. It's e-learning at adobesells.com. I believe that's what I said, but I'm not sure. Thanks for that, Melissa. I do appreciate everyone's time here today. And Melissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you.